The narrative opens at a spacecraft's research facility, where two males are heard yelling. One of them accuses his companion of being insane, while the other seizes pliers and threatens his fellow when a quarrel breaks out. The strange spacecraft outside is seen from here, with a rounded shape and shining brightly. Harold Richards, the ship's pilot and lieutenant colonel, wakes up and performs push-ups before hopping onto an exercise bike. Dr. Abe Anderson, his companion, gets up to prepare coffee and spikes it with booze. Harold visits the lab and records information while observing bees and feeding an aquarium-dwelling electric eel. Finally, he uses a periscope to scan his surroundings, but all he can see is blackness. The ship is spherical, with one side absorbing light and the other emitting smoke. Abe does nothing while Harold works as he sips alcohol from sachets, puts on sunglasses, and watches TV. After completing his tasks, Harold prepares himself a cup of coffee and settles down on the couch. Anderson is informed by Richards that they are coming, but Abe believes their endeavor is worthless. Harold quietly gets up and walks out of the room. Harold performs push-ups before going to the lab. He accidentally drops his pen into the tank while tossing a fish into the electric eel. The military tags around his neck fall into the water, and Harold gets electrified when the eel contacts the metal tokens. After waking up, Abe seeks out Harold, and he spots his partner's dead body. Abe pulls Harold across the ship while hurling a bag over him in an outburst of madness. He prepares to toss his colleague into space but holds back. He enters the control room and makes an effort to understand how everything operates. To determine their distance from Earth and the universe's edge, he queries the computer, but the computer is unable to compute this. The spacecraft keeps flying towards the shadows and the void, and Anderson gets out of the airframe. Abe wakes up and inadvertently presses the lever, causing the ship to launch the sack outboard. In panic, Abe rushes to the periscope and sees his partner's body floating out into space. As more choppy weather rages around the ship, the man nods off again, and a large electric stingray can be seen as he approaches the portholes. Abe must now go on his own since he is puzzled. The speaker aims to answer the key question of whether they will reach the end of the universe when they cease observing stars. Anderson's secondary goal was to investigate how weightlessness affected honeybees, but the findings are tentative. They also had a pinball machine, but it broke. Abe is confident they will be able to reach the end of the universe when they cease observing stars. Abe constructs a noose out of wires and takes out a photograph of his wife. Something shocks the ship, and Abe ascends into the window capsule, blinded by a brilliant white light. Dr. Weatherford is giving a speech at a conference from 13 years ago, discussing the impending space expedition and presenting Abe as a distinguished marine biologist. She then calls Abe from the crowd and presents him as a distinguished marine biologist. The doctor is excited to be testing their theoretical assumptions in practice. One of the experts in the room believes that taking on such a mission would be a mistake, but Weatherford believes it is justifiable. Harold, who has previously been chosen to operate the module, shakes Abe's hand, and the process of getting Abe ready for his space trip begins. Dr. Weatherford is fascinated by the multiverse and believes it is more complex than previously believed. She believes it is important to recognize the universe's fictitious nature, but Abe loses consciousness and is perplexed. They make an effort to resuscitate him, but the doctor advises them to take into account his low level of stress tolerance. Harold lifts Abe up and makes him feel better. Dr. Weatherford is excited about the aspiring astronauts when Abe passes out again. The action then returns to the spacecraft, where Harold was still alive, where they attempt to correct the system after seeing an issue with the airlock. However, they must operate the lever manually due to the automated garbage disposal not functioning. Abe chuckles as Harold warns him that this will be tiresome. Richards and Anderson share equal responsibility for managing the bees, but Harold is defying regulations by feeding the eel personally. The scientist warns Harold that this is risky, but Harold ignores him. After looking through the periscope at night, Anderson doodles something in his notepad and sees one of the galaxies. Abe takes a supply case out and puts sardine jars back inside, then throws the luggage through the airlock to prevent Harold from feeding the eel. He then moves on to Harold's control pod. Harold is controlling a spacecraft on autopilot when Abe enters and questions why he is doing so. On the control panel, a red button glows, and Abe prevents him from pressing it. Harold is playing around and exploring what may happen if nothing is done. He strikes his buddy in the face out of rage, but the ship doesn't experience any damage. Harold starts to doubt the value of his effort and asks the computer if he needs to click the buttons. Harold queries Abe about where he stored the sardines, but Anderson informs him that he launched them into space. Richard snaps a photo of Anderson's wife instead before tearing it up. Abe realizes Harold has already struck his companion before he can fight him. Abe and his teammates are taken to the edge of the universe and greeted by the astronauts. They offer a toast to space, and Abe downs his first sachet of booze before quickly beginning to consume more. Later, Abe goes to the lab to check for dead bees and finds that one of them has died for an unexplained reason. He discovers that one of them has died for an unexplained reason after examining it under a microscope. Harold returns to the room with a window and is given a vista of the starry sky. The daily routine, which has been repeated for years, is the same. On the sofa, Abe curled up and slept. The automated eel feeder is malfunctioning, so Harold looks for his buddy and finds him dozing off. Harold counters Abe's remorse that he hasn't accomplished anything for the day by saying everyone has to take a break from time to time. Abe attempts to fix the arcade game, but a short circuit occurs, and he is unable to fix it. Harold also feeds the eel personally by removing a can of sardines. Abe has created a necklace and bracelets out of wires, but Harold warns him against making foolish decisions. When Abe unlocks his locker to show off his jewelry, a photo of his wife slips out, making him happy because he believed he had lost it. Harold inquires about Abe's plans for the day, but Anderson informs him that the hive has already been harvested and he must work on the bees today. Anderson visits the lab to monitor the gas flow to the hive, recording the information in an observation log. Abe enters the room with the windows and sees orange light outside. He pulls out a picture of his wife and holds it up to the glass. When Harold and Abe cross paths, they are both happy to report that the ship is still in the air and the bees are still humming. Abe claims that space honey will be available as early as the following day. Abe has never been to the control room before, but Richards assures him that piloting the ship is similar to operating a jet ski in space. Something unexpected happens to the ship, which Richards compares to a jet ski in space. Harold plays with a still-functioning device to beat his previous record, but Abe diverts him, and the game is over as the spacecraft is drawing near an orange object. Harold walks to the cupboard to get bread while Abe gets ready to collect space honey. Random, eerie flashes keep happening all over the ship. Harold doesn't understand why Abe finds this area so appealing. Anderson finds it wonderful to observe the stars and planets. Richards laments that his wife is more attractive. Abe wonders why he made the decision to abandon her and go on the mission. Harold first responds that his country requested him to, but later clarifies that the primary justification is the huge tax savings for the family. On his side, Abe claims that science forced him to take this journey. The men, Abe, Harold, and Anderson, are on a voyage to discover if there is more out there than they initially believed. Abe is actively breaking records in an arcade game, while Harold provides bread and mentions the honey to his spouse. They continue talking about their family and the reasons they agreed to the voyage while sampling the space honey. Abe's wife is captured on camera, and Anderson regrets that his wife left him, which is why he wanted to travel as far as possible. Abe is playing an arcade game when he realizes it is broken, and an alarm rings on the ship. The number of insects in the lab has decreased, and all of the bees have died. Abe struggles to fall asleep and keeps thinking about his wife. He turns on his side, and two other astronauts are seated at a table. Harold discovers Abe's notepad and discovers self-portraits within it. Abe responds that it is Harold's still-alive body, but Harold snaps at him out of the blue. Richards confronts Anderson and demands an explanation, but Abe claims that following the incident, he sketched Harold and the things he can recall. Richards confronts Anderson with pliers and demands an explanation from him. Harold believes Abe is insane, but Anderson informs him that bees are to blame. Harold notices a picture of himself being electrocuted by an eel and sees many manifestations of this event in other realms. Abe is at a loss for words to convey the situation and is drawing while attempting to recall the details of the event. Abe and Harold are not the only ones affected by this. Richard struggles to accept the notion that the eel will be the cause of his demise, while Anderson is unaware of what is taking place inside him. Other works, such as a depiction of white cracks in the night, are displayed for his companion. Harold dips his hand into the tank and feels an electric jolt as he tries to understand how the eel could possibly kill him. Abe rushes to the porthole when something unexpected happens and finds a bundle of wires protruding from his chest. He takes the tool and cuts one of the wires before returning to the other. He pulls the bundle in his direction when he hears an odd sound. The spacecraft trembles as the cables start to ignite. Abe rushes to the porthole, where he observes the ship deviate off its trajectory and crash into the night. Unexpectedly, Abe meets his wife outside in the garden, and the home phone rings. Anderson is informed by Dr. Weatherford that the post for which he applied has already been filled. Abe pulls up a newspaper with two other astronauts on it, and the narrative shifts back to the spacecraft they are on. One of the workers accidentally cut the wrong cable, leading to the ship breaking apart and disappearing into the darkness, and the movie ends. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.